Hi people, welcome to BluUKJazzDance. I am the last Manchester UK jazz dance keeper of the flame of UK jazz dance culture, lifestyle and movements. UK jazz dance is an umbrella term for a number of UK underground jazz dance styles. And what happens, the styles of culture was created in the homes of dancers who started in the wombs of mothers. How vernacular dancing was created and some of the climate in which it was created, racism, discrimination, cross-cultural experimentation, oppression, repression, ill health, people trying to heal, people trying to celebrate themselves. Basically the voice, jazz is seen as the voice of an oppressed people seeking a better quality of life, was how my art form was created. This is me, and this is me coming back to the stage in 2011 in a most amazing event called the Mixed Movement Festival. At this time I've got Septus. I won't talk about it, but I use dance as one of the vehicles. I use my social dancing as a tool to improve my health, my well-being, to improve my cognition, and I did it proactively through research. Yeah, I created a statement, and it's important to say that statement to promote the positive images and energy of my African culture, heritage, arts and wider uses. Why did I promote African culture in Britain as a person born here in 1964? My early learning was 1964 to 70 in one of the most amazing cross-cultural communities in Britain, which was Moss Side, Manchester. Now, people are unaware that Moss Side, Manchester, was the first suburbs ever created in Britain, was Moss Side and Whalley Range and all the surrounding areas were the first suburbs ever created, the first modern suburbs. So what happened, the spirit of suburbia and modernism is in the blood of people that came there. And what happened was the immigrant community was as unique in Moss Side. People need to understand. The catalyst for jazz happening, the modern world, was Manchester and Greater Manchester. Do you understand? And the fact the Moors being in Europe was a catalyst for it. Obviously the first individuals for the catalyst of modernism goes back to great African kingdoms, when pyramids were built, when the Moors were in Europe bringing advanced science and technology, storytelling, everything to do with the Moorish culture as individuals from 700 to 1492 in Spain. The Alhambra tells you about architecture, tells you about art, science and technology. That period of time in Spain, in Europe, Portugal and Italy, what was happening there with Jews as well. Not only the Moors living by themselves, the Moors were living side by other cultures who had great science and technology also as individual, came to impact on Manchester. People need to understand, yeah? Jews were in Manchester, came here as individual, particularly during the period of modernism. It's a city that attracted individuals. So Manchester was a catalyst for jazz happening and the north of England, yeah, from Liverpool engaging in slavery. Then what happened was Britain were individuals that supplied slaves to the Spanish. You have to know that history. Cut a long story short, the cross-cultural mix is unique to anywhere in the world. That's even New York, before New York. So you have to understand the modern cities were being emulated, other modern cities emulated Manchester. And Manchester, what people need to know about UK history is important, or Great Britain history, is this. It's unique to anywhere in the world. Britain colonialized. Its slavery is unique. Its interaction with wider cultures through great African kingdoms with the Moors is unique. Royalty, Romans being here, and Moors being part of the Roman Empire in Britain for many years is unique. The whole thing about penal colonies is unique. So the whole thing about colonialization. Britain's dance development is unique. Yeah? E.g. going back to 1066, Harold, the Battle of Hastings. What changed Britain was the Normans coming here. The history of different cultures. From 1066, they never had a British king again or British queen again. People need to understand that. It's important that people understand. They never had a British king again. other different cultures have been influenced by Moorish culture and African culture, brought that culture to Britain, as well as Moorish culture being here already itself, which people need to understand. And what happened is, I'm a dance educator, and I always identified dance has a root. And so what happens, seek the roots, not the fruit. Our history is not history till we celebrate it in true context to its period, sharing its true significance. I'm one of the dancers that identify to individual. My dance has a heritage. My dance has a history. And dance doesn't happen in a vacuum. The city of Manchester, its architecture influenced me. The temperament in my city. The pace of my city. The culture. I was born in 1964. 1964, 70 was my early learning period. And that was in a transitional period. Never happened before with the 60s. Jazz music transformed from 1964 with Coltrane and what people were doing. Blue Note in 1960, what he'd done in the 50s, went on. Manchester from 1946 to 72 was the number one modern jazz dance city promoters in the world. You have to understand. 200 clubs existed. Prior to that, jazz, early learning jazz, Dixieland jazz was here, and the Charleston, during the Charleston period, the Charleston period in the Lancashire environment and the north of England, people could afford to become flappers. They were having all-nighters 24/7. That time it was portable record players and portable records. So portable record players today are not new, or the Ghetto Blaster was not new. Do you understand? They had portable record players, and the record collecting in the Lancashire is huge. Music was huge as a form of entertainment, form of leisure, form of recreation, what people don't denote. And what happens is people have to look at the history of entertainment, the history of leisure, the history of sports in Lancashire, going back hundreds of years, and you see a commonality that is there, that we always had it, was in the homes, was in villages. People always had some form of pageant, some form of events. And Lancashire, by its cosmology and its religions, because remember, religions, the Quakers had to leave Britain. The point I'm going to make is that Manchester is recognising for importing dance, music, leisure, modernism to the other part, to its colonies, and importing from its colonies that culture also. So African American culture from the southern states. Who was one of the biggest promoters? The city of Manchester was one of the biggest promoters, yeah, of African diaspora culture. Do you understand? It already, in the north of England, they already promoted it from, I told you, the Moors being here in 1400s in the castle in King James. In the 1400s, employed Moorish comedians, Moorish choreographers, Moorish trumpet players, and he paid them. Because what happened, royalty always wanted to have the best knowledge. They wanted to have the best entertainers, and wherever people could find them, they asked people to go out and bring them entertainers to here. We want to see the best of what's happening, because people wanted to know what was happening in the modern world, and royalty documented this. And so Manchester or Scotland has a history where Moors were employed as musicians, comedians, choreographers. Morris Dance came here as an individual. Remember jazz, jig, the reel. Study these dances, what these dances are. These dances were dances of which are multicultural dances. They were dances that were mixed with other dances, and they came to be mixed by social dance activities that were taking place by common people. Is understand through events, through competition, through sharing, through the plight of poverty, poor people to escape involved in dance and music, yeah, and people started to travel. And so you know, if you know the history of the north of England, how the Irish got to Australia, penal colonies, how people got to America's penal colonies, because America was a penal colony not being identified. So I'm identifying to individual. My dance today, as an individual, has a heritage, has a history, has a culture, has a lifestyle, has movements. And what happens is, unfortunately, it's been misrepresented in writing, and I'm one of the individuals that talk about is a dance expert. And what happened, one of the most beautiful things is, as an individual, I used it for a wide range of ways, for my social development, for my spirit, mind and body development. How I would describe it, I use it to improve my social skills, people. I use it to involve my physically, my intellectual, my cognition, my creative skills, my cultural awareness, to improve my emotional state, to improve my spiritual awareness. People are aware that dance, our cultural dancings came out of spirituality first, and our social activities really reflected our spirituality. Do you understand? They weren't just fad and sensory. So I'm one of the dancers who made a promise to promote the positive images and energy of my African culture, heritage, arts, because of debased. To do that, I had to engage in research. So I'm recognized one of the individuals who engaged in a load of research, and that required me to gather research material, travel different parts of the world, contact people, because I was an individual, I had pen pals from different parts of the world, and part of that was enabled by me doing work in the student environment of Manchester. I set up a project with a gentleman called Mr. Blackman, our own independent project called Student Empowering Students. What happened, Manchester had been a place where African diaspora people, Africans and African Caribbeans, had been debased, and we had contributed to the world. But it didn't just happen like that. That happened from the first ever conference, called the first international conference to do with black people in Britain, happened in 1981 after the riots. Because of the riots, the media had promoted a negative about African and African diaspora people, depicting us as these violent people, etc., etc. And international writers, scholars knew this would bring violence to us. It would create an even worse, create a worsening of our situation in Britain as a people who were defranchised, people who were socially marginalised already, people going for jobs. Because after the riots of 81, what happened was they had something called area discrimination. If you sent for a letter, sent an application for a CV to an employer coming from our side, you wouldn't get that job. Do you understand? And what happened, a lot of stereotyping took place. I went to college in 1981, and there was a lot of stereotypes. I went to Germany, there was a lot of stereotypes. I went to Lake District, I did a project called Student Empowering Students, and a lot of people stepped back for us thinking that we were these violent people, and they were shocked that we were individuals who were articulate, we were constructive, we were engaged in, we had a lot of cultural activities that they were aware of. One of them, UK jazz dancing, which I'm doing here at the moment, and we used it on stage. We used it for a wide range of things within youth clubs, because I was 16, I was a youth worker, I was an individual in further education. I had my own dance classes, dance exercise, dance health classes. I had my own things at 16, I had my own dance group, so people were shocked when I introduced them to the dance. When I went to Lake District, I was involved with a number of West Indians that put on a play for all the people in the Lake Windermere, and we were commended for being the best group, interactive group. People were shocked to meet us, and they were shocked when they thought about what the media had portrayed and what had the education that they'd been given, because people had been given a miseducation on blacks in 81. And what happened, as I said, scholars came in, and that's how I developed my core mission statement, because it was redressing that we had been debased and we were talked about in an undignified way, and we needed to dignify ourselves. We had to show that we had grace, we had to be, as individuals, were elegant, as past jazz musicians had done, as past jazz dancers had done, as past artists, black artists, used their artistry, used their entertainment status and profile as sports people as well, used their status to tell people that we were elegant, we were dignified, and we were people to get people to have contact with us. Because what happened, we've been socially excluded from social activities, physical activities where other cultures were. So one of the things that we did, we used our art form to bring about better social cultural cohesion. And my art form today is one that's been imported to Japan, Europe, America, by TV, by individuals like me traveling the world and always sharing my dance with the people. I share some great stories. So one of the key things, that's what I'm doing through my project, for a number of projects I've created. One of them is called Rebirth Real Cool, talking about my legacy. My legacy is I'm the last keeper of the flame of UK jazz dance, and one of them individuals identified to individual. My dance doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a social, there's a physical, there's an intellectual, there's a cultural, there's emotional, there's spiritual, there's political, economic, technological, environmental, legal aspects. I can share with you my time from 1964 to 20, as we're approaching 2020. I can share with you the positives of my art form. I can share the cultures, the lifestyle. Most importantly, I'm going to share with you the misrepresentation and how people are still trying to promote a popular negative stereotype of us from like the black and white minstrel show, negative stereotypes that have been written in a new book around UK jazz dance, in a film that's come back called Absolute Beginners, that portrayed us in a negative way in 1986, which killed any dignity that we had as a people. This film destroyed it in 1986. A magazine destroyed any dignity that we had for our fashion. Any respect that anybody would have for us was done. And what happened was, these two, the film, books, magazine, basically my art form was an avant-garde art form. It was an individual pushing the boundaries of its learning, just like bebop and modern jazz, and we were depicted like the bebop musicians were in 1986. And from that period, Manchester lost its culture due to, unfortunately, it lost its respect, it lost its status of being an epicenter for UK jazz dance development, travelling the world, people, travelling the country, because dancers from the north of England were recognised for promoting, travelling to all the events that were happening. We were seen as the most organised and planned individuals in promoting a positive image of this art form, for sure. And me being the last sort of keeper of the flame doing that today. If you look on the web, there's only one person that's giving you oral history for a reason. My art form is not one where you just dance and show people. You have to give people scientific knowledge behind the dance. You have to give people heritage knowledge, because that's the only way you're going to get mutual respect for dance. How do we come to respect ballet, which was debased once before? Because the writing, the oral history, the amount of documentation that we have, it's made into an educational form which given it its respect. Same with jazz, there's a lot of documentation. Same with hip-hop's got a higher status, which came after UK jazz dance culture. What happens, because people have written on it, people done PhDs, people done masters, so we recognise that behind the scene there has to be someone who's an educator, and I'm recognised as being an educator as well as a dancer. And I went back to university to do this as an individual, but I got Septus, and this is me dancing during the period of Septus, and I was involved. What happened was, despite having Septus, I knew what raised the status of my art form is if I was involved in mixed movement, because mixed movement actually is the closest to reflecting what UK jazz dance is on stage. It's a live improvisational performance involving